Joespeak, Joe Richardson, Joespeak podcast. Just like I said, I have a good one. I always say that, but I really, really, really mean it this time. Today, I've got a dear friend who has done some very interesting things, and he's continuing to. And so this is going to be a great conversation because it's going to give us something that will help us to get more sharp about our own definitions in our lives and those types of things. So today I'm proud to let you guys know about Pastor Frank Oliver. Pastor Frank, how you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How you doing, Brother Joe?
Oh, man, I'm thrilled to be here. This is good. This is really an honor. So,
well, congratulations on the show.
Oh, well, thank you very much.
Things,
yeah, I appreciate it. You know, it's guest driven. So thank you, because thanks to you, it works for all of us. Come on.
Right. I can't breathe because of a bankrupt system or industry. I can't breathe because feel like I'm suffocated because I can't be truly who I am. And so I think that he sent a sound out, and that should wake us up as the church to understand people have been suffocated. Matter of fact, maybe even by our system.
Let's start off. I always start off with building a house.
Okay.
Letting people know, expertise standpoint, what it is we're dealing with. So we have just that much more credibility when we get to the nitty gritty. So talk to us a little bit about your background and your growing up, educational background, and just kind of how you landed at where you stand right now.
Well, I am a product of the California state school system. I am the 5th generation of preacher in my family.
5.
And so my grandfather, raised by my grandparents, my grandfather had 19 brothers and sisters. Wow. 15 of them are ministers in some sort of way from all various denominations. And so we were real big on family reunions, which were very interesting.
Right.
Because we can go from anywhere from Catholicism to Apostolic, Methodist to Baptist, and so you could find me in kind of anywhere within that church setting.
Right.
And but all of those different generations were always interweaving activism, Black liberation, theology, and how do we embed our community involved into our spirituality. And so I had to I grew up with that type of approach. I grew up in that type of place. And so from high school, being BSU president, and first terrorist attack I've ever heard was at my high school, at Nogales High School, West Covina. Man had a pipe bomb that he was, I guess, planning to go off, and somebody next to him slammed the locker.
Wow.
And it ended up going off with him there. And that was kind of before there was terrorism, right? This is about 93, maybe before we knew what terrorism was. And now all of the people are out on the yard. We're all out on the field. People are scared. Parents don't know what to do. And somebody runs up to me and says, "Can you lead us in prayer?" And we begin to get the students in groups of 100. And right on the news, you see all of these circles built, these circles.
Wow.
And at that moment, my grandfather said, "I knew you were okay." Because I knew it was you leading those prayer circles. And we just put different people in the prayer circles and say, "You pray that everybody's well." And so that kind of went into college, and in college I ended up finding myself being a part of BSU, ASI, joined a fraternity, and just kind of kept on in college ministry and kept on that kind of same moment, where the intersectionality of spirituality and activism, right? And being a part of how do we better people's lives, lift them up as we lift up their spirit. And so that kind of got me into where I was, ended up going to Cal State, Long Beach, Go Beach, which I love.
49ers, right?
Yes. Well, they just changed it to something else.
Okay.
I haven't been there. I haven't given any money either, so they're probably upset. And so they changed. And so I went to Long Beach and had a little too much fun in college, so I had to get up out, right, and finished up and did some graduate studies. And matter of fact, just to let you know, this is the breaking news. I just got the letter of acceptance into Payne Theological Seminary.
Oh my gosh.
The oldest HBCU seminary to do a D-Min.
Oh my God! Wow, so, wonderful, fantastic, congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
You know, it's the and y'all know me. I'm very open. It's HBCU. I found out I'm accepted on this yesterday. Right. And school starts on Monday. So. Right. Thank you, HBCU.
Got all kind of time. Right.
But and as I'm doing my D-Min, I'm doing that in I want to research and search the apostolic prophetic movement, and its notion of also being a part of pushing us into a beloved community that fights for us to have a better world. Right. How do we look at those moments? And intersectionality of dealing with Paul and Peter, and dealing with how Peter treated Gentile believers, and Paul having to engage him to be better, and that's pretty much the book of Galatians, right? And that's kind of like that, or where the diaconate comes in, as in Acts chapter number 6, has to deal with the mistreatment of one group over another group. And so as spirituals, we think many of our church hierarchy and our church offices many of them come out of us answering the call to activism. Right. Man. So that's where my heart is.
Wow, fantastic. So tell me how we can read your CV, and you got all these things going that to somebody might seem to be, if not inconsistent, then just very different. You know what I mean? But there seems to be this spiritual underpinning with everything. So talk about, I know at some point you actually had a charter school.
Right. So my senior year of coming out of Long Beach State, I had done a lot of work, had met very much. I'm real big about relationships. Right. I will never forget a man by the name of Dr. Jim Robinson offered me a full ride to Stanford. For School of Law. And that was always my dream. I was going to be this lawyer like Willie Gary or Johnny Cochran or something, and I was going to have this jet. I started preaching at the age of 4, right? Wow. Pulpit by the age of 7, doing conferences by the age of 9, and by the age of 11, I kind of had hit a little circuit and all of that, right? Those was kind of my increments. But I kind of felt like I was going to be a lawyer. I'm going to jump out of my jet and helicopter. I'll go preach at my friends' churches. Right. And I'm going to go back to my cocoon of world of I'm living high. And so when he offered it, it was wonderful. And that began my wrestling moment. When the Bible says, I never could understand when Jacob had to wrestle with God, right? Yeah. And I wrestled. I mean, I couldn't sleep. I was breaking out in sweats. Right. And literally that was that call where God had called me and said no. And so I had to tell him, I literally turned him down, and recommended somebody who was like an enemy. Like it was like somebody who hated me, right? Like they was talking about me at school, hated me. Everybody knew they hated me. So he looked at me like, so that's who you recommend, right? And then from that journey, I'm like, I got to go into ministry. I'm going to go, and I had this, I'm going to do my doctorate in ministry, and I'm like, where is this going to lead? And so as I'm weaving that, I started going to education and teaching, and I ended up going in the classroom. Right. Been an educator. I started off as a long-term sub. Right. Yeah. And we went into education and just fell in love with the classroom, and the classroom fell in love with me. Right. And I ended up doing that for, being in the classroom. 8th grade was my 8th grade. 9th grade was good. Yeah, 8th grade. I loved middle school. So 7th and 8th grade was well. And I ended up operating there for 10 years. And at that moment, I got out. You're talking now. I'm coming into pastoring a church. Right. And I need to make sure that this church is engaged in the community. So I step out of the classroom And now I am at USC under Cecil Murray's tutelage at the passing of the mantle. And I'm trying to build this world. And what starts to drop in my lap was people start to have problems in nonprofits and problems in their thing. And they will call me and I'll come in and fix it. I'm going to come and turn it around. And so happened, wonderful guy by the name of Dr. Tommy Morrow. They had founded a charter school, and he had asked me to come sit on the board and asked me, can I come help turn this vision of two brothers from the South who want to build this charter school to help young people in San Bernardino. And I did. We got in it and really turned it around. I was loving the work that we did. And because of the place it was in, we had to fold it into another charter school doing the same thing it was doing. But those 2 years were wonderful years of being able to grow. We ended up winning from 40 students to 300. We was able to do some impactful things leading, and it opened my mind up. I was so Jungian, and now to come to the charter school and to see that world and to see what that world gives was wonderful. So that I began to do that, and then people started calling me to help out and do other charter schools, and then and I started doing that, and I ended up getting married and having a little girl, and I was like, I'm not about to spend 14 hours way in Timbuktu. I want to be there, and so what is next? And that's where I said, I've always had this itch for entrepreneurship. What legacy am I going to build for my children? Where am I going to build for them to have the name? And it was the charter school. It was Dr. Morrow and them who kind of sparked that in me of watching him build legacy for his daughters and children. I asked myself, what will I leave my kids? I think it was Kanye West when he was in a better mindset. He's in a better day, better mindset in his life. Who his album who engaged us about college and said, you know, he does this skit about a guy who leaves his kid all these degrees, you know. And I had to ask myself, what legacy am I leaving? And it was there that I began to start rocking. And in that midst, I start to have health problems, and the doctor began to engage me and said, hey, man, you have to, if you want to live longer, you're going to have to start changing your diet. You got to do, because when you're on the road, and as we do, and you running, you're motivational speaking, you're doing everything. All you do is eat when you pick up something. Just pick up something. And I had to the point where my diet was just awful, and I had picked up 40, 50 pounds, and I just, you know, just living that life of hustling here, hustling there, good hustle, I call it. You know, as John Lewis called it, good trouble, good hustle. And I had to begin to rethink, and so I wanted to do something that had to deal with the health and wellness of us. And so happened, I came across a couple things. It's good to keep relationships, and I had a client that I kept relationships with, and done some good work with, and I got a call, and that opened up the door for me into the restaurant business. And then from there, Mayweather Boxing and Fitness Gym. It was the new thing going. I say they wanted you to fill out this thing. I fill out what I want to do, the intersectionality again of spirituality. How do we get urban communities to be more healthier? How do we also get the churches to take this buy-in? And how do we connect a great name as Mayweather? And when they heard it, I got called like, I promise you the next day, we like your idea, we love it. And I'm like, okay, come in. And I'm like, oh, I didn't think they was going to take it. I don't have no money. You know what I mean? Like, oh my God. And so begin to engage in those journeys. And so USC has a program that's called social entrepreneurship. There's a kingdom. There's a clothing line of young brothers who do worship. They do like the worship and stuff, and they call it Entre-Believer, This notion of being a believer, spirituality, mixed with entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship. It says, how also am I making impact? How do I follow my dreams, build businesses, but measure them by the social impact they make? And that's kind of been my journey in my life.
Right.
What I wanted to do.
That's huge. I think it's an interesting time right now because of, COVID and the racial unrest, which some of us remember the LA riots. So, here we go again. My parents, your parents might remember the Watts riots and some of those other things and the things that were going on in the late 60s. I think it's interesting because it sounds like to me, and talk about this, the USC program really gave you a bit more of the how to an underpinning that was already there. And so there are many people now that are just getting the memo. And listen, I'm really glad they're getting the memo. But there's a lot of spiritual folks, pastors included, that are just getting the memo of the church's role in changing things outside of their four walls.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I'm glad that they're getting it. But one of the reasons why, frankly, I'm at your church is because you have a concern for the community around you and you spiritually speak truth to power. So it wasn't like, okay, COVID's happening, let's talk about it. No, actually, we could take a message from you from 5 years ago. You know what I mean? Right. And we're right there. So talk a little bit about just this time and what it is that you see in terms of not only non-Christians understanding the spiritual underpinnings and implications of everything from the civil rights movement in general and to this thing in terms of this whole thing that's going on now in this return, but also Christian folks and the spiritual folks who have been within their four walls and hadn't connected the dots to say that because of what I believe, I need to love justice and move forward.
So, USC, Cecil Murray, the AME Church has always been engaged in civic engagement, right? And being able, now they're being stretched to spread that beyond their denomination. And they gave me the policy and gave me the strategy on how to do it, always been birthed in me has been this notion that theology is not good if it can't be practiced. Right. And so how do we practice this? How do we, faith without works is dead. So how do we work this thing in which we are? And so I will say this. So I used to always get kicked out of denomination. I used to always get kicked out of meetings. The bishops always kicked me out. So because I used to just think different. So they used to make us deal with the end times. I grew up in churches where it was the end time. They used to sing songs. Two men talking on the phone. One disappeared and one was talking alone. And we used to have to sit in these shut-ins. And if you went to sleep, you was going to miss Jesus. And you throwing water on your face. It was just awful, First scary movies I've seen was in church, Don't get left behind. You have to get your head cut off. You know what I mean?
My producer was talking about that very movie.
Man. And so that's where I was. So they pounded in us. The two witnesses are going to come back, and how those witnesses would come back and be slain, and all all the things that we were taught dispensationally wise. I believe George Floyd is a martyr. I believe he represents a witness to the world that's bigger than black, and that sometimes scares black people because and I want them to understand I'm a black liberation theology guy, but his words are bigger than Black Lives Matter. His words is bigger than Black Lives Matter. His word is I can't breathe. The world understood I can't breathe. The suffocation where W.E. Du Bois gets us to understand that this new 21st century is a classist. So where you still have racism, classism, and you have sexism that have become demons who are suffocating
Right.
Not only America, but the world, right?
Yes, yes.
And so when he said, I can't breathe, and you watch him slowly die with someone on his neck, it wasn't just, oh man, what they did to that black man. This was symbolic of many of us in every part of our lives. I can't breathe.
Right.
Those student loans are suffocating me.
Come on now.
I can't breathe. That's that woman who says, I just cannot move to the next level. Right. I can't breathe because of a bankrupt system or industry. I can't breathe because feel like I'm suffocated because I can't be truly who I am. And so I think that he sent a sound out, and that should wake us up as the church to understand people have been suffocated. Matter of fact, maybe even by our system.
Yeah, sure.
I can't breathe. Right. You spend more time keeping me into sin consciousness,
right? Sure.
Instead of me being able to have God consciousness,
right?
Right.
That's right.
In that place, then maybe we need to hear those words, and maybe those was the words of God. You remember when the Bible says that the Lord said to Cain, "I heard your brother's blood cry out." Mm-hmm. That your brother's blood has words. It has a voice. Maybe that is what George Floyd was for this day and age. Right. The Abel that's crying out to get us to rethink our systems and our places. And so I'm having fun seeing that, and scary also because I have to maybe change what I've been traditionally. I'm a church boy. Mm-hmm. Yeah. In a minute I can get up and it's church boy fire and brimstone. Yeah, that's right. So I feel very cool. And if I didn't have to study well, I can take a text and tell you about hell, heaven, holiness,
the whole thing, right,
and be good. And now I have to rethink that and make that change. And how do we rethink that in the midst of now marriage equality?
Yeah, yeah.
How do we rethink that in the midst of where 70% of heterosexuals are divorcing in church? Mm-hmm. Come on. So we're not really being able to be a light in that area for marriage, but then yet we want to condemn same-sex marriage. Right. And yet I can still be evangelical in my approach and say, well, I feel this way and make this stance, but I also have to rethink and reapproach how I look at things, how I speak about things, and not be so easy to judge and condemn. Yes, sir. Yes, because maybe I'm suffocated and I'm putting my knee on somebody else's neck instead of allowing people to have free will, free choices, what God has given them. Those are the things that I begin to wrestle with and I engage with, and to tell the truth of my own prejudices, my own discrimination, my own, there's places I don't want to learn. And I'm trying to engage in those places. And so, I can be real quick to say, well, I'm not, if that's what people want to do, they want to be married, same sex, that's on them. I'm not going to perform it, but I'm not going to knock you for your right to agency, but I'm not going to perform it. And I can say that I'm okay within that realm of how I feel about my spirituality. But then I can stay on the other place that I'm prejudiced. I'm stuck prejudiced on transgender. I'm just keep it real. And I want to know, can we, if we're going to be the church, to admit that I struggle and not evolved and may not evolve in this area, right? But I have learned to kind of make some sense of this area. And I don't know if I will. On my grandfather's day, you would have never seen them. Some of the things that's going on now, they didn't have questions for. I remember leaving Dr. Cecil Murray. When I graduated, I remember Bishop Noel Jones said, y'all going to have to come up with answers we could never even think of. The woman who is not married, but she wants to have a kid. So she wants to do in vitro fertilization. Is that a sin? Does she have to have a husband in order to have a baby? These are questions that people are asking and are happening. Technology is causing us to ask ourselves, what is our theology for now? And I'm willing to tackle that and try to wrestle with that.
I have always, and one of my big pet peeves with church and church folks, is on the issue of abortion.
Okay.
Where, you've got folks that want to tell a woman what to do with her body, but don't you tell them nothing about their guns. You know what I'm saying? So now, I think that type of thing is a personal decision, and I am much more better off trying to affect the circumstances that make someone make a very difficult decision. So, for instance, I don't have time in my mind, even as a Christian person, jumping up and down saying I need Supreme Court justices to keep women from getting abortions. First of all, the man's not involved at all. He's not being held accountable. Nothing's happened to him. And I make this distinction. I need to trademark this. Some people call it pro-life. They call themselves pro-life. I'm like, I don't think you're pro-life. What I think you are is pro-pre-birth. You think you're gonna get a crown because you got, you kept people from making that decision. But what would make it easier for them to make that decision is support once those children got here.
Gotcha.
You know what I mean? So we're talking about poverty. We're talking about education resources. We're talking about, food stamps. Whatever the case may be. All of these things that make it difficult for somebody to make this decision. Now, we're not talking about the people that are hypocrites and have their mistresses go get abortions. We're not talking about them. And we know that that's out there. We know some people take this choice. But my thing is, if you're, quote, anti-abortion, I think that the battleground with that is dealing with the circumstances that make it happen. Because if you're not doing a heart thing, I think everything in the kingdom is a heart thing, and everything ought to be a heart thing. So in other words, I can tell my kid, and you know how it is having a hard-headed kid as a particular issue, one or the other or whatever else. Do as I say, not as I do. Okay, they didn't do it, but if nothing's happening in here, as soon as they get a chance, it's on like Donkey Kong.
It doesn't change. Well, one of the problems is first of all, we've got narrowed into pro-life, pro-choice. You just added another layer. Right. And then I want to add the layer of I'm pro-responsibility. How do we teach people to be responsible for their bodies and be responsible for the sanctity of sex? People hook up. They've been hooking up since the beginning, right? How do we deal with that responsibility and pro-responsibility? And what responsibility as a man that I have towards, instead of telling you your body, maybe I should have responsibility of my body, and then we talk about contraceptive. Pro-responsibility, right? I think we need to add that to the engagement and kind of redefine these terms about how we have. Now, I don't meet many people. There are some out there I've learned who are pro-abortion. There are some people out there that are just pro-abortion. I don't think they really know they pro-abortion, but I think they push it. Pro-abortion, right? And so I think that we've allowed people to label that those people on the left are pro-abortion, right? And I don't believe many of them are just, hey, let's just go in here and do what you want to do today. I'm going to have abortion today. You know what I mean? But I think where the black evangelical church can add to, we have seen, it's not that we're pro, I think that a lot of times they think that we're about abortion or we're okay in that, which I believe conservatively we're not, right? I just think that we've seen what happens when you have people who are not prepared to take care of children. The church knows the weight of having to take care of children and grandmothers and grandfathers who are struggling in their own health, now taking care of 15 kids because somebody else didn't take care of those kids, and big mamas, and all that has happened about because you want to tell them, well, they had sex, they need to have it, abortion is wrong, when really you have a lot of kids who are unwanted, and what that does. And what that makes it. And so I think that we need to engage that conversation. One of those things, too, is I like to deal in this crux of with David and Bathsheba. I like to deal there. David, the Lord kills the first child. Like abortion. Well, maybe it wasn't because the kid was already alive and it was. So at the end of the day, Lord kills the child. But God's problem with David had nothing to do with what we talk about, his adultery.
Right.
David couldn't build the temple because he had too much blood on his hands.
Right.
He was a killer.
Right, sure.
And he loved to kill. And God said, you can't build the temple of peace. So what amazes me is guns kill.
Right.
As much as I love my Second Amendment right, we spend more time talking about the thing that kills when that's the thing that eliminated David from building the kingdom. And maybe that's why the church is not growing.
Sir.
And maybe we need to look at that. And it's in the scripture, but we don't want to visit. We don't want to visit that way. We don't want to kind of look at those things. We don't want to get fresh revelation and fresh eyes. And so that's what I kind of want to engage us on is. And again, like I said, that challenges me.
Right.
Because I'm you know, I'm not with the NRA, but I'm with you. Take your gun, you know, take your gun, and I don't need 911. We can have no stuff. Right? I ain't gonna wait for y'all. Yeah, you step in my yard, you know. Right. But then I have to challenge myself and say, is that God's plan for humanity? And we have got so desensitized for killing. We look at it as much as slaughtering, as much as we eat meat, right? It was my friends in college, my Hindu friends in college, who taught me, you know, I'm going around, I'm just stepping on stuff, and they praying over what is you doing? Right. He said, you just destroyed life. And like, you know what? You like I stepped deep. On a bug. Right. You know what I mean? You know, like, you know, we don't, where I come from, roaches is just not, the devil is the roach. You know what I mean? I said if you talk to, y'all talk about the snake that talked to Eve, the roach where I come from is the demon, right? But for them to help me to understand that all life is precious, right? Right. The Imago Dei, we're made in the image and likeness of God, but all creation is, and whatever we kill sends a vibration in the earth. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Wow. You know, man, wow. Right. That's some, I called it spooky. Right. But that's some deep spirituality, right? Yeah. And there's no way we're going to kill, but how do we feel about that part of killing? Mm-hmm. And if I could have some sensitivity toward the ant that I kill, surely I'll probably feel better about persons. Yeah. Can we get there? Right. I remember Long Beach City College, young guy, he's an African guy, and the dude, you know, we used to play the dozens, and the guy is bagging on him, talking about the African friend. And he said, please, sir, don't talk. And the dude started talking about his mama, and he didn't know his mama, but you know how we played dozens. He said, I'm asking you not to talk about my mother again. He said, sir, I don't want to do this to you. So the guy stands up and said, what you gonna do? He said, sir, I'm telling you, you need to stop. Right. Next, I know, African friend that hit the dude that fell all the way down the stairs. He went down there and prayed for him.
But after he hit him, though.
Hit him, prayed for him, and then said, can I help you up? Right. You know, and I'm looking like, what? He said, I just feel so bad that I had to do that to him. Right. And you know, hindsight, when I was there, I was laughing like, you got knocked out, prayed for, and he tried to help you. It's not your day, guy, right? But as I think about that, here goes somebody who really did feel bad for doing the action that they did. How many of us are that deeply connected spiritually? Right. That conviction is really grabbing us. Because most people, exposure, being exposed got them, not conviction. Right. And so that's where I kind of, my heart wants to engage people. Right. How do we get so close to the Lord in the spirit that I'm convicted because it was wrong, not because of what the consequences of my actions are going to happen to me.
Right. Ooh, that's huge.